Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer with the Kentucky Derby Recap 2022 edition. And for the next several minutes, Mike and I are going to try to explain the inexplicable or perhaps the extremely improbable. Because as we take a look at the horse card, your 2022 Kentucky Derby winner, yes, it's Rich Strike, who didn't have enough Kentucky Derby qualifying points to get into the body of the race. He was the first also eligible. But when Mr. Lucas scratched ethereal port, Rich Strike got in. Rich Strike won it, Mike. You've watched the race, I'm sure, from every different angle. Your thoughts?
Listen, it was an absolutely stunning result when it happened. You can go back as I have, in a couple days since they've run the race, Dan, look at Rich Strike on paper leading into the Derby and try to see what you missed. You didn't miss anything. This horse was not a contender on the way in. He wasn't close to good enough to be able to beat this field, and that's why he was the longest shot on the board. But crazy things can happen, Dan, when you load 20 into the gate. They go a mile and a quarter for the first time. And, most importantly, they go an absolute blazing pace in front. That's when you get results like this, and we got one.
It certainly was a blazing pace, and we'll get to that in a second. Going into the Kentucky Derby, Rich Strike's best career Beyer speed figure came in his prior start. That was when he was third in the Jeff Ruby Stakes with an 84 Beyer. Of course, that race on Polytrack. His best dirt Beyer going in was a 65 that he had earned at Churchill Downs in a $30,000 maiden claimer. He was taken that day by Eric Reed. He also won that race by 17. Maybe he likes Churchill.
Yeah, I guess that's one way you could look at it. I, hate to look at races that way, but you did know that he could handle the racetrack. Obviously, even if he ran that one Churchill race back, if you're trying to make the case for him, he would have been beaten 50 lengths in this race. But hey, he obviously improved. He's better. He's a better horse now, and things just really, really broke his way on Saturday.
Let's take a look at the order of finish for this year's Kentucky Derby, and let's talk about the fast pace. And we have to give credit to Timeform US's Craig Milkowski. He pegged that the horses in the UAE Derby, Summer is Tomorrow and Crown Pride, would set the pace and they would go fast, and boy, did they. 21-3 for the opening quarter at a mile and a quarter race, 45-1 for the half mile. And just consider, Mike, this occurred with Classic Causeway, one of the expected speeds, missing the break.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, you felt like there was a chance that there would be a legit pace there. We haven't had one of those, derbies with a really fast pace. It seems like in a really long time, Dan. Certainly since this whole points thing came into play here, leaving some of the faster 2-year-olds out. But we got, one of those throwback derby paces in here. They were flying right from the gate. You could tell they were going fast as soon as they broke, Dan. Summer is Tomorrow. He broke running from post 4, and he did not try to rate this thing up front. He went fast, and a couple of horses went after him.
None of the horses that were first through seventh after the opening quarter mile finished better than 12th. That was Taiba, who was sixth early, finishing 12th. The race completely went to closers. Rich Strike was 17th early. Zandon was 13th. Simplification was 15th. Mo Donegal was 19th. Barber Road was last. Tawny Port was 14th. Tis the Bomb was 16th. You get the picture. You could argue that Epicenter might have run the best race, considering he was very close to that fast pace. He mid-moved into that fast pace. He put away Zandon's strong stretch challenge, and he just got pipped by the Bomb late.
Yeah, to me, it's pretty clear that Epicenter ran the best race here. Listen, he got run down by an impossible horse, but he's a very unlucky loser of the Derby. I guess the story going forward here, Dan, will be that Asmussen lost another one. I guess it's small consolation for the connections here, but they sent out the best horse on Saturday. They just happened not to win.
Let's talk a little bit about Zandon, who got the right closers set up in this race. It looked like he had all of the momentum outside of Epicenter at the eighth pole, and Epicenter just refused to let him go past. Your thoughts on his effort?
I thought he ran well. This was, to me, Dan, a tremendous ride from Flavien Prat. Zandon did get bumped at the start, sort of bounced around a little bit between horses. He got through that. And once he did get through that, that little spot of bumping there, Pratt, to me, just did everything right. He took this horse right to the rail. He moved up to follow Epicenter all the way around the track. It felt like, he targeted Epicenter as the horse to beat. He was right. He followed that horse all the way and just let Rosario tow him into the race. And then he came clear at the top of the stretch. He had every chance. It looked like he was going to go by. Epicenter would not let him by. Zandon ran well in here. He did not run as well as Epicenter did.
Considering that Rich Strike broke from post position 20, it was a remarkable ride by Sonny Leon. He was basically in the two path heading into the backstretch. He was in between horses and in and among, and for a brief moment, while the horse was moving well on the second turn, it looked like he might get stopped, but he was able to get through, dove down to the inside and win. Perhaps not only did the pace help him, but the ground-saving nature of the trip did as well. Some of the other closers had to go very wide and also had other issues, most notably Mo Donegal, who didn't break very well from the inside and then had to go wide along with Simplification turning for home.
Yeah, those things are all true. I mean, Rich Strike, as far as his trip goes, listen, when you have post 20, it really helps when the pace setters are going fast, because they just stretch this field right out. And it wasn't only Rich Strike; it gave basically everybody, Dan, a chance to sort of get over and save a little bit of ground in the race. Certainly, it worked to Rich Strike's advantage. You're right. It looked like, maybe he was going to wind up in a little traffic around the second turn, but he managed to get through it. And Sonny Leon, when you're riding a horse who's, this kind of a huge price, Dan, it really does take off some of that pressure when you're trying to close from off the pace. You can take that chance to stay inside for the stretch and just hope things work your way. You're a huge price in the race. If it doesn't work out, nobody's really going to be pointing fingers at you. If you're Irad Ortiz on Mo Donegal and you try the same thing and you get blocked in traffic, there's going to be talk about it the day after the race. So Sonny Leon did what he could here, and everything worked perfectly for him. He got a great clean run towards the inside. I will give Rich Strike some credit, though, Dan. He still had some work to do in the final furlong of this race, and he finished hard.
Let's talk a little bit about the two ex-Bob Baffer trained runners sent out by Tim Yakteen. Taba, we talked about his inexperience. This was only his third lifetime start, and he ended up in behind horses, getting some dirt kicked in his face, up close to a fast pace, and he paid the price. I really think we shouldn't hold this race against him too much.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to, not be too hard on him. The pace was, just listen, it was too fast for him. He showed his speed from the start, and that was the plan for their connections. They wanted to be sort of up close to the pace and hopefully, out in the clear. He couldn't get out in the clear, Dan, because the pace was too fast for him. And so he wound up over behind horses chasing, even up the backstretch. Both Epicenter and Zandon moved through to his inside. They moved right past this horse with no trouble. This horse tried really hard. He got very tired through the stretch, and Mike Smith just sort of wrapped up on him there outside the eighth pole. Just a really, really tough situation for Taba to be in, and he couldn't hack it.
Messier finished 15th, but he also was up close on the pace. He actually poked ahead in front after 6 furlongs in 110.34. It was just too ambitious a pace for him.
Pace was too fast. He did not back off it. You'd have to imagine that that Velasquez knew they were going fast in front of him, but he didn't back off. He kept right up there. He split the leaders as they headed into the far turn and took that race over. Actually wound up racing Crown Pride around the second turn to the top of the stretch once, Epicenter, and then Zandon came for him. Messier was no match for them. He got very, very tired at the end of this race, but he did a lot of hard work early.
Quick questions before we talk about the Preakness coming up. Disappointments in this race. Would you consider White Abarrio a disappointment? He was sort of in mid-pack early and was one paced around there.
I don't want to say he was a disappointment. Maybe he was. I guess it depends on how you looked at him, Dan. Personally, to me, this was a Derby that I didn't see, a bunch of really, really tough trips in here. Maybe White Abarrio got one of the tougher ones. I mean, he was just wide. There were very few horses wide on the first turn. He was wide on the first turn. He was wide up the backstretch. He was very wide on the second turn trying to make a run. And he just couldn't get into it. And, maybe the distance worked against him. He got very tired through the stretch, but he didn't have an easy trip in this race, whether you liked him or not.
Let's talk about some of the horses. And you mentioned there weren't really those Derby trips that we seem to see every couple of years, two, three, four horses really compromised. Did one horse's trip or two or three catch your eye and make you think, well, okay, in the Preakness, if things get better, if the in the Belmont, if things get better, these are horses you definitely want to keep an eye on.
Well, I mean, the easy horses to point to as far as the trip goes are just the horses that were up front because the pace was too fast for them. So they paid the price. As far as the other horses go, I mean, listen, to me, Classic Causeway is one of them. Not that you feel like it was going to make a difference because if he did, break well and show his speed, that wasn't going to help him in here. But he just got bumped at the start, wound up off the pace, and then he was, sort of one of the few horses who got in traffic around the second turn and got shuffled out. He wasn't going to be anywhere at the end of the race, but the trip was not ideal for him. Maybe Mo Donegal's trip could have worked out a little better for him. He caused some of it himself because he didn't break well from the gate, Dan, and then he was very wide around the final turn. He was staying on at the end. He just couldn't get involved. And it's hard to feel too bad for him because the pace was blazing.
We know that Todd doesn't like to send his horses back on short notice in the Preakness. I assume we'll see Mo Donegal and maybe even charge it in a race like the Belmont. As of right now, the top three finishers in the Derby will face each other again in the Preakness. Is it really out of the realm of possibility to say the Derby winner is going to run well again? He's going to be, won't be 80 to 1, but it'll be a solid price. Is he just a one race wonder? Is it just a fluke, or does he have a legitimate chance to win this off a 101 Buyer speed figure?
I mean, I'd be hard pressed to take him for a horse who was 80 to 1 and is now going to take a lot more money just because everything just worked out way too well for him, Dan. I guess the biggest parallel to this horse, is it Mind That Bird, who was a huge price, got the inside, run into a fast pace, pulled off a big upset, came back 2 weeks later at the Preakness and ran a giant race against Rachel Alexandra. I don't know if this horse can do that or not. I would probably not bet the race that way, but it's hardly without precedent.
Smile Happy looks like he's heading for the Preakness as well. Has the luster sort of been taken off of Smile Happy a little bit now? I think you could have made excuses for some of his races. The Derby, again, with the 20 horse field, you can make an excuse there. Has he come back as good in 2022?
Maybe not. I thought he, was one of the horses who maybe ran a deceptively good race on Saturday, Dan. He was close to the pace. He was up there, in sort of the similar position as Epicenter and Zandon most of the way around the track. He came 4 wide to the stretch. He was right next to Zandon and actually raced on down to about the 8th pole. He wasn't good enough and he did not. He got really tired. I don't think he really wants to go this far. I think the distance more than anything else is working against this horse right now. He did not run poorly on Saturday, though.
Did simplification win you over a little bit? And he obviously did very good work in South Florida the entire winter leading up to this race. He had supposedly been training lights out leading up to the Kentucky Derby, and he ran quite well. He did have the right pace setup. Did you get won over by this horse?
Yeah, he didn't really win me over. He did run well in this race, though. He didn't win me over, the Dan, because to me, he got one of the best trips in the race. I mean, everything worked out for this horse. He never had traffic. He was always in the clear. He was well off the pace early, and he had every chance through the stretch. He did his best with it. He wasn't good enough. He wound up finishing 4th. He ran fine, but he didn't win me over.
Let's take a look at the prices for this year's Kentucky Derby. As the late great Harvey Pack would say, they were hanging up big balloons with Rich Strike, number 21. He paid $163.60 to win. Epicenter, Tough Luck second for Steve Asmussen. Zandon was third. If you had simplification for your superfecta, you were returned for $1, $321,500.10. And if you were fortunate enough to have Mo Donegal for your super high five for $1, it paid over $741,000. We'll see Rich Strike, Epicenter, and Zandon again in the Preakness. We'll see if it's a true rags to riches Cinderella story for trainer Eric Reed.